What's going on, guys? So today is my mom's birthday. We gotta check some fence first, and then we're gonna go enjoy the rest of the day with her. But in the meantime, while we're checking fence, let's talk about the difference in raising goats and sheep. The biggest difference is going to be hardiness. See, goats are very fragile creatures by nature. And we've taken an animal whose natural habitat is up in mountains, hopping and jumping on cliff faces and stuff like that. We've taken that animal and we've moved it to a 5 to 50 acre farm. And we're expecting that animal to do well. But you see, what comes with that are parasites. Confining an animal whose natural habitat isn't on the farmland, you're gonna deal with parasites. And if you raise goats or you know someone who raises goats, parasites are one of those things that is just part of the business of raising goats. I always tell beginning farmers who come to me and say, hey, I want to get into raising goats. I see all these YouTube videos or I see TikTok videos, they look so cute. I want to raise goats. I always tell them, if you go out there and buy 5, be prepared for your first 2 or 3 to die before you learn how to raise goats. And if you're lucky, the remaining goats will live long enough in order for you to gain more experience in raising goats. Sheep, on the other hand, they are more hardier than goats. Though they do share a similar anatomy, the parasites don't seem to be much of an issue for sheep. Now, I'm not saying sheep don't get worms or sheep don't die from parasites. But what I have noticed is the ability to bounce back from sheep compared to goats is night and day. You know, the same parasites that will kill a goat in 3 days, a sheep may deal with a little diarrhea, but she's gonna eventually get over it. Unfortunately with goats, if you ain't treated the issue within 3 days, you might wanna start digging a hole, because unfortunately, once they go down, it's hard to get them back standing. Let's talk about cost. This will all pertain to your area. Down here in Mississippi, goats are gonna be a little cheaper than sheep. On average, goats down here in Mississippi are gonna bring between $150 to $300. Compared to sheep, on the other hand, you can easily spend $175 to $375. The cheaper option doesn't necessarily mean the better option, because now we gotta take into account parasites. You know, you may be able to get into buying goats cheaper, but you may spend more money on ivermectin, valvazen, trips to the vets coming out to your house with goats than you ever would with raising sheep. But on the other hand, with sheep, you may spend a little more money getting into the game of raising sheep, but you could spend a lot less money on dewormers and having vet visits and all the things that come with parasites that you don't deal with necessarily on the sheep end of the spectrum that you will deal with on the goat side of it. All right, so let's talk about containment. First off, if you want to get into raising livestock, go ahead and spend the money on a sturdy fence. What that's going to do is that's going to protect them for something coming in and prevent them from getting out. You don't want to be liable for a goat winding up in the passenger seat of somebody's car because they got out because you chose to build shitty ass fence. So go ahead and invest the money into buying a good permanent perimeter fencing. When it comes to containing said sheep or goat, once you have your perimeter fence built, goats and sheep, when it comes to containment, they are 2 different animals, okay? Goats are very curious animals by nature. They got this wire inside their brain where they always want to see what's on the other side of that fence. Regardless of whatever you got for them to eat, where you want them to eat, they want to go on an adventure on what's on the other side of this fence. But what comes with that is the inability at times to be able to keep them contained in one place. 90% of my farm is in electric fence. Goats can be trained to electric fence. You know, anybody who says that a goat can't be trained to electric fence, they haven't tried to train goats to electric fence. They will respect the electric fence. But trust me, they will test that fence daily to make sure that it's turned on. Sheep, on the other hand, they're extremely docile. I'm a huge believer that if you train a sheep to electric fence once and you were to turn that thing off for 5 years, you would never have to worry about your sheep ever getting out. They just don't have that same craziness inside their brains that makes them want to escape. Regardless of how good your fence is built, a tree limb is gonna fall. There's gonna be a gap in your fence. Something's gonna happen where a goat's gonna eventually find a way to get out of your pastures. They're just naturally wired like that. You know, sheep on the other hand, they're just happy where they're at. You just have to be an awful fence builder if you have sheep and they're always getting out. At the end of the day, don't listen to anything I just said. If you want to raise goats, go buy you some goats. If you want to raise sheep, go buy you some sheep. Hell, buy both. They're companion animals, you know. They are herd animals by nature. I only made this video to try to highlight some of the positives, some of the negatives of each, and hopefully that can help in making your decision on whichever animal you want to add to your farm.